The mountains on Kepler 442d turned purple when the twin suns began to set. Danny Morrison watched from the observation deck of his research outpost, a coffee mug warming his hands against the evening chill. He had been alone here for 63 days now, cataloging plant samples and monitoring weather patterns. The solitude suited him fine. After the divorce and the failed promotion back on Earth, being 16 light-years away from everyone felt like exactly what he needed. The sensor array started beeping at him around midnight. Danny set down his book and pulled up the holographic display. Strange energy readings were coming from the northern mountain range, about 40 kilometers from his position. The pattern looked organic, almost like a heartbeat, but the power output was massive. Nothing in his database matched it. He should report this to the orbital station, follow protocol, wake up his supervisor Peter Chen in the middle of the night cycle. Instead, Danny grabbed his field kit and headed for the transport vehicle. Something told him this could not wait for bureaucracy. The terrain got rougher as he approached the coordinates. His vehicle bounced over rocks and through shallow streams, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Then he saw the glow. It pulsed between blue and violet, bright enough to paint the surrounding cliffs in strange colors. Danny stopped the vehicle and stepped out, his breath forming clouds in the cold mountain air. The creature lay in a crater of scorched earth. At first, Danny thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The thing was massive, easily 30 meters long, with a body that seemed carved from living crystal. Scales caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Wings, torn and bleeding some kind of luminescent fluid, lay crumpled against its sides. The head was angular and proud, even in obvious pain, with eyes that glowed like molten amber. A dragon. Danny had seen enough ancient Earth mythology databases to recognize one. But this was no myth. This was alien, real, and dying in front of him. He should have run. Should have called for backup. Should have done literally anything except walk closer. But Danny found his feet moving forward anyway, his medical scanner already in his hand. The dragon's eyes tracked him, intelligent and wary. A low rumble came from deep in its chest, not quite a growl, more like a warning. Danny raised his empty hands. The universal gesture for peaceful intentions. The scanner readings made his stomach drop. Multiple fractures, severe energy depletion, and something that looked like plasma burns across most of its body. Whatever this thing had been through, it was a miracle it was still alive. A sound filled his head, not quite words, more like thoughts translated into something his brain could process. The dragon was creating a telepathic bridge between them. The voice felt ancient and tired, carrying weight that made Danny want to sit down. "You are small," the dragon said in his mind. "Are you dangerous?" Danny almost laughed. Here was a creature that could probably eat his vehicle as a snack, asking if he was dangerous. "Not to you," he managed to say out loud. "You're hurt. I can help, maybe." The dragon studied him for a long moment. Danny could feel something like surprise through their connection. "You would help me? Even though you do not know what I am?" "You're hurt," Danny repeated. It felt like enough of an answer. The dragon lowered its head slightly, and Danny took it as permission to approach. His hands trembled as he pulled out his emergency medical kit. Nothing in here was designed for alien physiology, but he had to try something. The luminescent blood was acidic enough to make his skin tingle, so he worked carefully, applying synthetic tissue patches to the worst of the wounds. "This will hurt," he warned before injecting a general-purpose cellular regenerator near one of the plasma burns. The dragon made a sound that might have been acknowledgement or might have been pain. Dawn was breaking by the time Danny had done everything his limited supplies allowed. The dragon looked slightly better, at least no longer actively bleeding. They had not spoken much during the treatment, but Danny could feel something like gratitude flowing through their mental connection. Finally, the dragon spoke again. "I am being hunted. The Sovereign Collective will not stop until they reclaim their property. I cannot return to my people. They are all gone now. Dead or enslaved." A pause, heavy with meanings Danny could only partly grasp. Then came the question that would change everything. "Can I stay here?" Danny stared at the massive creature. Every regulation he had ever learned, every protocol, every sensible thought in his head screamed at him to say no. To report this immediately. To let the experts handle it. This was first contact with a clearly intelligent alien species. There were procedures. Committees. Entire departments designed for situations exactly like this, but he thought about the word enslaved and the pain in those glowing eyes. He thought about how it felt to be hunted, to have nowhere safe to go. He thought about his own small life, running away to this empty corner of space because everything else had fallen apart. Yes, Danny heard himself say. You can stay here. He had no idea what he had just agreed to. No idea how he would hide a 30-meter dragon from colonial authorities. No idea what the Sovereign Collective even was or what they would do if they found their escaped property. But looking into those ancient, tired eyes, Danny knew he had made the only choice he could live with. The dragon's eyes brightened slightly. Something that might have been the beginning of trust. My name is difficult for your kind to speak. You may call me what you wish. Danny looked at the way the creature's scales caught the rising sunlight, throwing off sparks of color like dying embers. Ember, he said. I'll call you Ember. Ember, the dragon repeated, testing the sound. Yes. That will do. Thank you, Danny Morrison. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever. What's that? Hope. The cave system Danny found was perfect. Deep enough to hide Ember from satellite scans, close enough to the outpost that he could make regular trips without raising suspicion. He spent 3 days moving supplies and setting up a basic camp inside the largest chamber. Medical equipment, food synthesizers, portable heaters, everything he could spare without making his requisition requests look strange. Ember was healing faster than Danny expected. The cellular regenerators seemed to work on alien biology after all, though not quite as intended. The dragon's scales had taken on a brighter quality, and the wings showed signs of mending. Still, it would be weeks before Ember could fly again, maybe months. Tell me about the Sovereign Collective, Danny said one evening, sitting on a flat rock while Ember rested nearby. The mental connection had become easier over the past week, requiring less concentration from both of them. Ember's eyes dimmed slightly. They are old. Older than your species by thousands of years. They believe that power gives them the right to own other beings. My people were conquered long ago, before I was born. We were made into weapons, tools, decorations for their palaces. We were bred to be beautiful and deadly. How did you escape? I did not escape. I was freed, briefly. Through their connection, Ember shared a memory. Danny saw it like a dream, experiencing it from Ember's perspective. A massive station in orbit around a dying star. Other dragons, dozens of them, chained and collared with devices that suppressed their fire and limited their movement. Then chaos, an attack by rebels, explosions tearing through walls. Someone releasing the locks on the collars. Freedom, sudden and overwhelming. We tried to fight, Ember continued. But we were weak from captivity. The collective's ships hunted us across 3 systems. One by one, my brothers and sisters were recaptured or killed. I am the only one who made it to the jump point. I barely survived the trip through hyperspace. When I emerged, your world was below me. I crashed here. The weight of that story settled over Danny like a heavy blanket. I'm sorry, he said, because what else could he say? Do not be sorry. You gave me shelter when you had no reason to. You risked your safety for a stranger. That is more than anyone else has done in 200 years. Danny let that sink in. 200 years. Ember had been alive for 2 centuries, most of it in chains. It made his own problems feel very small. The close call came on day 27. Lieutenant Karen Brooks sent a message that she would be stopping by for a routine inspection. She did this sometimes, dropping in to check that the remote outposts were maintaining proper standards. Usually Danny had a week's notice. This time he had 6 hours that he made the trip to the cave in record time. Military inspection, he told Ember, already packing up anything that looked out of place. You need to stay absolutely quiet. Their scanners are better than mine. I can lower my energy signature, Ember said. Make myself harder to detect. But I cannot make myself invisible. Just stay deep in the cave. Don't move, don't think too loudly if that's a thing you can control. I'll get rid of her as fast as possible. Karen Brooks arrived right on schedule, her military transport setting down in the outpost's landing bay with practiced precision. She was efficient, thorough, and friendly in that professional way that never quite became actual warmth. Danny had always liked her, even if he found her visits stressful. Everything looks good, Morrison, she said after reviewing his logs. Though I notice you've been using more medical supplies than usual. Everything okay? Danny's mind raced. Injured myself pretty badly a few weeks back. Slipped on some rocks while collecting samples. Nothing serious, but it took more supplies than I expected to patch up. She studied him for a moment, and he wondered if she could hear his heart pounding. Then she nodded. Be more careful. You're alone out here. A serious injury could be deadly before help arrived. I will, Danny promised, and meant it. If something happened to him, what would happen to Ember? After Karen left, Danny sat in his quarters for a long time, just breathing. That had been too close. He was terrible at lying, always had been. If she had pushed even a little harder, he probably would have cracked. That night, he made the hike to the cave despite his exhaustion. Ember was exactly where Danny had left the dragon, motionless in the darkness. Only the faint glow of those amber eyes showed the creature was awake. Thank you, Ember said simply. Danny pulled out the portable stove and started heating water for coffee. He had started bringing a second cup for Ember, who found human beverages fascinating. Don't thank me yet. That was way too close. If she'd decided to do a full sensor sweep of the area, we'd both be in containment right now. You protected me. That is worth thanks. They sat in comfortable silence while the water boiled. Danny had stopped being scared of Ember somewhere around day 15. Now the dragon's presence felt natural, even comforting. The outpost had stopped feeling empty once he had someone to talk to every night. Tell me about your world, Ember said suddenly. Not the facts I can learn from your computer databases. Tell me what it feels like to be human. Danny laughed. That's a big question. I have time. So Danny talked. He told Ember about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities that never slept. He talked about music and art and all the ways humans tried to express the things they could not say directly. He talked about love and loss and how sometimes the same thing could be both. He talked until his voice got hoarse and his coffee went cold. Ember listened to everything with an intensity that made Danny feel like every word mattered. When he finally ran out of things to say, the dragon was quiet for a long moment. Your species is strange, Ember said finally. You live such short lives, but you pack them so full. You feel everything so intensely. It must be exhausting. Yeah, Danny agreed. It really is. But also beautiful, Ember added. I have lived for centuries, but I think perhaps I have not lived as fully as you have in your few decades. You make me want to understand what that feels like. To burn bright instead of lasting long. Danny looked up at the cave ceiling, at the patterns the firelight made on the stone. He thought about how empty his life had felt just 2 months ago. How much had changed since the night he decided to help a dying alien instead of following protocol. Maybe you already are, he said softly. 2 months into their arrangement, Danny realized he had stopped counting the days. The routine had become natural. Wake up, conduct his official research, file reports that Peter Chen would skim and approve. Then in the evenings, hike to the cave with supplies and spend hours talking with Ember. He had learned more about the universe in 8 weeks than in his entire academic career. Ember taught him about stellar navigation using natural magnetic fields. About species that communicated through color changes in their skin. About philosophical concepts that human languages did not have words for yet. In return, Danny shared everything he could about humanity. He played music from his personal collection, everything from classical symphonies to ancient rock songs. He read poetry aloud, tried to explain why certain combinations of words could make people cry. "Play that one again," Ember requested one night. They were listening to an old recording, something Danny's mother used to play. A piano piece, simple but melancholy. Danny restarted it. "You like this one? It makes me feel something I do not have words for. Sadness, but also something warmer. Like remembering pain from long ago, but knowing it no longer hurts quite so much." "Nostalgia," Danny offered. "We call that nostalgia." "Yes. Nostalgia. I feel it when you share your human things with me. I feel it for a life I never had. Does that make sense?" Danny thought about his own life before Kepler 442d. The failed marriage, the career that had stalled, the general sense that he had somehow missed the point of everything. "Yeah," he said. "That makes perfect sense." One evening, Ember asked him something that had been coming for a while. "Show me a memory, Danny. The way I showed you mine. Let me see your world through your eyes." Danny hesitated. The memory sharing went both ways, but he had been avoiding it. His memories felt small and mundane compared to Ember's centuries of experience. What could he possibly show that would interest someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall? But Ember was waiting, patient as always. So Danny closed his eyes and thought of the beach. The one from his childhood, where his parents used to take him before everything got complicated. He could almost smell the salt air, feel the sand between his toes, hear the waves. That he opened the memory to Ember, letting the dragon see through his 8-year-old eyes. His father teaching him to swim, his mother laughing as waves knocked them both over. The simple happiness of being young and safe and loved. It felt like nothing, this ordinary moment from an ordinary life. When the connection faded, Danny opened his eyes to find Ember staring at him with an expression he could not quite read. "That was beautiful," the dragon said softly. "I have never known anything like that. To be so small and so safe at the same time. To trust so completely." Danny felt something twist in his chest. "You were never a child, were you? Never had parents who just wanted you to be happy?" "I hatched in a breeding facility. The collective raised me to be useful. I was taught to fight, to intimidate, to be beautiful and deadly. Nobody ever taught me to swim for fun." They sat quietly for a while. The weight of that difference hung between them. Danny had spent so much time feeling like his life was small and meaningless. But Ember had never had even that. Never had the luxury of an ordinary, safe childhood to remember. "I'm sorry," Danny said, not for the first time. "Don't be. You have given me something equally valuable. You have given me friendship. You have shown me what it means to be cared for without conditions. That is more than I ever hoped for." The message from Peter Chin arrived 3 days later. Danny's replacement team was coming early. Budget cuts, personnel shuffles, something about consolidating operations. Bottom line, he had 1 week left on Kepler 442d instead of the month he had been expecting. Danny stared at the message for a long time before making the hike to the cave. He did not know how to tell Ember. Did not know what they were supposed to do. The dragon was healing well, but still could not fly long distances. And even if Ember could leave, where would the dragon go? The Sovereign Collective was still out there, still hunting. Ember knew something was wrong the moment Danny arrived. The mental connection carried emotions as well as thoughts, and Danny's fear was probably broadcasting like a beacon. "What happened?" Danny told him. The words came out in a rush, tripping over each other. The early relief team, the 1-week timeline, the impossibility of hiding a dragon from 6 trained scientists who would be living in the outpost full-time. Ember listened without interrupting. When Danny finally ran out of words, the dragon was quiet for a long moment. Then I will leave, Ember said simply. I have imposed on you long enough. You have given me time to heal and knowledge to survive. I can find somewhere else to hide. No. The word came out sharper than Danny intended. No, that's not what I want. I don't want you to leave. Then what do you want? Danny sat down heavily on his usual rock. What did he want? He wanted to keep coming here every night. He wanted to keep learning about the universe from someone who had seen so much of it. He wanted to keep this friendship that had become the most important thing in his life without him even noticing it happening. I want to tell them, he said finally. I want to tell them about you. Tell them everything. Make them understand that you're not a threat. That you deserve protection, asylum, whatever the official term is for not sending someone back to be enslaved. They will not understand. They will see me as dangerous. As something to be contained or studied or used. That is what powerful beings do. Maybe. Probably. But hiding you forever isn't an option anymore. And I refuse to just let you fly off into space alone, hoping the collective doesn't find you. So we have to try. We have to at least try to make them understand. Ember's eyes glowed brighter, the way they did when the dragon was emotional. You would risk everything for me? Your career, your safety, possibly your freedom? Danny thought about it for exactly 1 second. Yes. I would. Why? Because you're my friend. Because nobody should be property. Because for the first time in years, my life actually means something. And because I think maybe you need to learn how to trust again. Through their connection, Danny felt something he had never felt from Ember before. Pure, overwhelming gratitude mixed with something that might have been love. Not romantic love, but the kind that existed between people who had saved each other without meaning to. Then we try, Ember said. Together. The investigation team arrived 3 days early. Danny got the alert while he was at the cave with Ember, and his heart nearly stopped. They were not supposed to be here yet. He had planned to break the news to them carefully, had rehearsed speeches in his head. Now there was no time for any of that. They detected the exotic energy signatures, Danny realized, reading the incoming transmission. Someone at headquarters noticed the anomalies in my sensor logs. They sent a specialist team. Ember rose to full height, wings spreading slightly in an instinctive threat display. Then the decision has been made for us. Wait here, Danny said, then felt stupid. Where else would Ember go? Just stay calm. Let me talk to them first. Please. He made it back to the outpost just as the transport was landing. 5 people emerged, and Danny recognized the lead immediately. Dr. Helen Grant, one of the colonial administration's top xenopolitics specialists. This was bad. They would not send someone like her unless they were taking the situation very seriously. Dr. Morrison, Helen greeted him with a professional smile that did not reach her eyes. We need to talk about your energy readings. Danny's plan to ease into the revelation lasted exactly 6 hours. The team's portable scanners were far more sophisticated than his equipment. They pinpointed Ember's location before dinner. Danny watched their readings spike, watched Helen's expression shift from curiosity to shock to something like fear. There's something alive in those caves, said Captain Roy Campbell, the team's security officer. His hand moved toward his weapon. Something big. Wait, Danny said, stepping between them and the door. Just wait. Let me explain. Explain what? Helen demanded. What exactly have you been hiding, Morrison? So Danny explained. Everything came out in a rush. Finding Ember injured and dying. Making the choice to help instead of report. Learning about the sovereign collective and the centuries of slavery. The friendship that had developed. His voice shook as he tried to make them understand that Ember was not a threat but a refugee. The silence after he finished was deafening. Helen stared at him like he had grown a second head. Captain Campbell looked ready to arrest him on the spot. The other team members exchanged shocked glances. You had first contact with an intelligent alien species, Helen said slowly. For 2 months. Do you understand how many laws you've broken? I understand that I couldn't let another being be enslaved if I had the power to prevent it, Danny shot back. Laws or no laws? We need to secure the area, Campbell said. Contain the creature until proper protocols can be established. Ember is not a creature. And I won't let you treat my friend like some kind of specimen. Danny was surprised by the steel in his own voice. Then take us to meet your friend, Helen said carefully. If this Ember is truly intelligent and non-threatening, let us see for ourselves. But Morrison, if this goes badly, you're looking at decades in prison. The hike to the cave felt like walking to his own execution. Danny led the way, acutely aware of Campbell's hand never straying far from his weapon. He reached out mentally to Ember as they approached, trying to prepare the dragon for what was coming. Ember was waiting in the main chamber, positioned to look as non-threatening as a 30-meter dragon possibly could. The team froze at the entrance, staring. Danny understood. No amount of description could prepare someone for actually seeing Ember. The crystalline scales, the glowing eyes, the sheer presence of something so ancient and powerful. Helen took a shaky step forward, her scientific curiosity warring with obvious fear. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ember, Danny said aloud, these people need to understand what's at stake. Will you share your story with them? The way you shared it with me? The dragon's voice filled all their minds at once. The team members gasped, some stumbling. Telepathy was not something humans were built for, and the initial contact was always jarring. But Ember's presence was gentle, careful not to overwhelm them. I am called Ember, the dragon said. And I mean you no harm. I seek only refuge from those who would make me a slave once more. Then Ember shared the memories. Not just with Danny this time, but with everyone. They saw the breeding facilities. The collars that suppressed fire and will. The centuries of servitude. The brief taste of freedom and the desperate flight across the stars. Danny watched his colleagues' faces as they experienced what Ember had lived through. He saw horror, then comprehension, then something that might have been shame. When the connection faded, Helen was crying. Campbell had lowered his weapon, staring at Ember with an expression of stunned respect. The others looked shaken but no longer afraid. My God, Helen breathed. 200 years. You've been alive for 200 years, most of it in chains. I have, Ember confirmed. Danny Morrison is the first being in all that time to offer help without seeking to use me in return. He asked for nothing. Expected nothing. Simply helped because he believed it was right. Campbell holstered his weapon completely. Dr. Morrison broke protocol, he said slowly. But I think maybe protocol was wrong in this case. Helen nodded, wiping her eyes. We need to contact the Colonial Defense Force. Admiral Stone needs to know about this. But Morrison, she looked at Danny, I'm going to recommend asylum for Ember. And I'm going to make sure they understand what you did here was an act of compassion, not treason. The Sovereign Collective will not accept that, Ember said. They do not negotiate for what they consider their property. They will demand my return. Then they're going to be disappointed, Danny said firmly. Because you're not property. You're a person. And we protect people. Helen pulled out her communication device. I'm sending everything to headquarters now. Including Ember's testimony. The Colonial Council needs to make a decision, fast. This is bigger than any of us. As the team began setting up equipment to document everything, Danny sat down next to Ember. Through their private connection, he felt the dragon's uncertainty mixed with fragile hope. What happens now? Ember asked quietly, just for him. Danny looked at Helen and her team, already working to help. He thought about humanity's capacity for both great cruelty and great kindness. He did not know which one would win out in the end. Now we find out what kind of species we really are, Danny answered. And whatever happens, we face it together. The Colonial Defense Force fleet arrived within 48 hours. Admiral Patricia Stone came prepared for a threat, her ships bristling with weapons, Marines ready for deployment. Danny stood outside the outpost with Ember and Helen's team, watching the military transports descend. His career was over. He knew that. The only question was whether he would spend the rest of his life in prison, but Danny had made his choice. He had uploaded everything to the Colonial Network before they could stop him. Ember's story, the proof of intelligence, the documentation of the Sovereign Collective's crimes. It had gone viral within hours. Every person in human space now knew about the dragon asking for sanctuary. About the scientist who chose compassion over protocol. Admiral Stone emerged from her transport with an expression that could have cut steel. She looked at Ember, then at Danny, then back to the dragon. "I should have you arrested," she said without preamble. "What you did violates about 70 different regulations." "Yes, ma'am," Danny agreed. There was no point arguing. However, Stone continued, "You've also created the biggest public relations situation in colonial history. Your little broadcast has half the population calling you a hero and the other half calling for your execution. The Colonial Council is in emergency session. And you," she looked at Ember, "have put us in an impossible position." Ember lowered the great head to look Stone in the eye. "I did not mean to cause trouble. I only sought to survive." Stone actually smiled, though it was grim. "Trouble found you anyway. The Sovereign Collective sent a formal demand 3 hours ago. They want you returned. They're calling you stolen property." Danny's blood ran cold. "You can't send Ember back. You saw the testimony. That would be condemning a sentient being to slavery." "I know that, Morrison. I'm not an idiot." Stone pulled up a holographic display. "The Collective is threatening military action if we don't comply. They have superior numbers and technology. This could mean war." "Then I will go," Ember said quietly. "I will not let your species die for me." "No." Danny's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We don't sacrifice people to bullies. That's not who we are. That's not who we should be." Stone studied him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of being human?" Something shifted in Stone's expression. "The Colonial Council is voting tomorrow. But Morrison, you need to testify. Tell them what you told me. Make them understand why you did what you did." The hearing was broadcast across human space. Danny stood in front of the assembled council members, aware that billions were watching. He had never been good at public speaking. His hands shook as he gripped the podium, but when he started talking about Ember, the fear faded. He told them about finding a dying creature and choosing to help. About learning that intelligence and personhood came in forms humans had never imagined. About friendship that crossed species and centuries. About learning what it meant to stand for something, even when it cost everything. "We have a choice," Danny said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We can be the kind of species that returns a refugee to slavery because it's convenient. Or we can be the kind that stands up and says no, some things are worth fighting for." Ember asked if they could stay here. I said yes. Now I'm asking all of you to say yes too. The vote came down to a single council member. Ambassador Luis Rodriguez, Earth's representative, cast the deciding ballot. Asylum granted. Humanity's first major declaration to the galactic community. We do not recognize slavery. We protect the vulnerable. We choose compassion over convenience. The Sovereign Collective was furious. But they were not the only power in the galaxy. Other species, ones who had suffered under collective rule, reached out to humanity. Offered alliance, shared technology, protection. Ember's case became the foundation of something larger. A coalition of the unwilling to bow to tyranny. 6 months later, Danny stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt outpost. It was not so isolated anymore. Researchers, diplomats, and representatives from a dozen species came and went constantly. Kepler 442d had become humanity's gateway to the broader galactic community. All because one scientist had chosen to help a dying alien. Ember landed beside him, wings folding gracefully. The dragon had stayed, choosing to serve as humanity's first official alien ambassador. It was a role that fit better than either of them had expected. "Do you regret it?" Danny asked. "Asking that question. Staying here instead of disappearing into space." Ember's laugh was like wind chimes. "I regret nothing. I asked if I could stay. You said yes. Everything else followed from that simple exchange. I have found purpose, safety, and most importantly, I have found home." "Home," Danny repeated. The word felt right. This place that had once been his escape from failure had become something else entirely. Something that mattered. "And you?" Ember asked. "Did you recover from your choice?" Danny thought about it. About the man he had been when he arrived here, running from a life that felt empty and meaningless. About the quiet solitude he had craved. About how all of that had been shattered the night he found a dying dragon in the mountains, that he had lost his isolation, his simple existence, his carefully maintained emotional distance from the world. He had gained responsibility, purpose, a friendship that transcended anything he had known before. The trade had cost him the person he used to be. He would never get that back. "No," Danny said honestly. "I never recovered. But I think maybe that's okay. Some things are supposed to change us. Some choices are supposed to matter so much that we can never go back to who we were before." Ember moved closer, the warmth of the dragon's presence a comfort Danny had learned to rely on. "Then we are both transformed. Both different from what we were. Both better for it." Below them, a new transport was landing. More visitors, more opportunities, more chances to build bridges between species who had never known each other existed. The galaxy was bigger and more complicated than humanity had dreamed. And they were facing it together, human and dragon, changed and changing still. Danny Morrison had come to Kepler 442d seeking peace in solitude. Instead, he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found a reason to matter. A friend who needed him as much as he needed them. A choice that redefined everything, all because a dragon had asked a simple question. All because a human had said yes when it would have been easier to say no. Some stories end with recovery. With characters returning to who they were before the adventure began. This was not that kind of story. This was the kind where you gave up everything familiar and got back something you never knew you needed. Danny never recovered from the choice he made that night in the mountains. He never recovered from meeting Ember. He never recovered from learning what it meant to stand for something bigger than himself, and he would not have it any other way.